This is going to be a demonstration of using the TriggerScript programming language to create and control a graph. So to begin, we're going to construct our graph by calling the function graph, which takes one argument, which defines the title of the graph. We'll just call it myData. And this function returns a handle to the graph, so we'll set h equal to that handle. And now that the graph is created, we should configure it. So we'll first set the background color of the graph, and we'll set that color to a slightly gray color. Next, we're going to set the plot mode. The plot mode can be either lines or points. In this case, we want to plot lines, so we're going to call set plot mode lines. And then we also want to set the plot color. So let's set it to red. Okay. Now we're going to want to test this, make sure the graph window shows up as we expect. So let's save this file. We're going to save it to a file named main.ts. And we're going to use the IDE to run it. So we hit play, tell it to run, and we see a graph window pop up. And I think this is kind of too dark, so we'll change it to be slightly brighter, maybe slightly lighter shade of gray, like that will do. Try it. There we go. That looks good. So now we're going to want to actually populate this graph with some sort of data. To do that, let's declare a function. We'll just call it processData. And processData will take a file name through which we will input the data. So that file will be called data.txt. And a graph to plot the data on. So we'll pass it the handle h. So now to create that function, all we need to do is create a new file. That file should be the name of the function. So processData. We'll save it. And it has two inputs, the file name and the graph handle. And in order to input data, we're going to use an API called pipes. To create a pipe, we just call the function pipe and give it the file name. And this will begin listening for any new line entered into that file. For every new line, there's a method called listenPipe. And this listenPipe method triggers an action handler. So that's what we have defined here. So every time a new line is entered, this action, this code we specify in the action will be run. So for each new line, we're going to want to plot the data. So we call hplot and give it a graph handle. And we need the x and y coordinates. These will be the first and second argument from the pipe, and arguments are just space-separated values. So we'll call readPipe0 and readPipe1. Alright, and so now for every line of text entered into this file, our action handler will be run, plotting the x and y coordinate specified. So let's give that a shot. I'm going to hit run. We see our graph window pop up. Let's open the file, data.txt. Now let's give it a couple of points, 1, 1, and 2, 2. So now when we save this file, we see that a red line is printed from the lower left to the upper right axis of the graph. We can then continue to enter points, 3, 5 maybe, 9, 10, let's do, I don't know, 50, 100, and we see that the graph updates accordingly. Okay, so now we can stop execution of this script, and we can provide yet another function that allows us to, I don't know, maybe clear the graph and maybe adjust the background color. So we'll call that function control graph, and this will also need to take a file name through which we'll input commands. So we'll call it commands.txt and the handle to the graph h. So again, we create that function by creating a new file and naming it accordingly. So control graph. And it's going to look pretty similar to the processData function, so I'm just going to copy that. We create the pipe from the file name, and instead of plotting a point in the action handler, we're going to pay attention to the arguments entered. So if the first argument is clear, we should erase the plot, so we will call the handled version HErasePlot and give it the graph handle. Otherwise, if the first argument is, let's say, BK color, we should adjust the background color. So we will call HSetGraphColor, and we'll provide it with the second argument provided in that line. And that's that. So now we will give that a run. Let's test it out. Hit run. Oh, it looks like I have an error. Let's go back. It's saying function graph color was passed one argument when two were expected. I needed to give it the handle to the graph, so we call graph handle. There we go. Let's try running that again. There we go. We see our graph get displayed with the points we entered. So now let's open the commands.txt file. And let's try setting the background color. Let's change it to be, let's just set it to white. Alright, let me save it. There we go. The graph updates. And now let's try clearing it. And the graph clears. Okay, that's all there is to it.